Hey guys, today we'll be looking at a superheroine figure that's outside from the usual Marvel or DC trope. Anime has its fair share of superhero shows, of which one of my favorites is One Punch Man. This unboxing will be regarding Fubuki, aka Blizzard of Hell, who is one of the two female characters from One Punch Man that is featured in Bandai Banpresto's Espresto Shapely line of figurines. Now, who is Fubuki? She is a B-class rank 1 professional hero in the Hero Association, an organization of superheroes in the world of One Punch Man. In the story, Fubuki is an esper with powerful psychic powers. Anyway, let's go ahead to unbox this Fubuki figurine. As far as I can tell, Fubuki and her sister Tatsumaki are the only figures in the Espresto Shapely line so far. Most likely, Bandai just decided to group figurines of the One Punch Man female characters in their iconic ensemble under the Espresto Shapely brand. I'll be looking at Tatsumaki in the next video, but for now, the focus is on Fubuki. Based on my experience so far, Espresto figures are on average larger in size compared to other Banpresto figurines. Based off just the box art alone, this figurine of Fubuki showcases her in her iconic outfit that she wears most of the time in the anime. Let's open up the box now and see if Fubuki is as good as the box art makes her out to be. Now, inside the box, you can see that there are lots of empty space. I guess that is to be expected when you consider the silhouette of the Fubuki figurine, which is that of a flamenco dancer with her arms straight up in the air. In other words, the figurine does not take up much space width or length-wise. Most of the figurine's volume is instead determined by its height. This is why you're seeing the figurine being packed the way she is. Fubuki herself consists of 3 parts, excluding the simple round base. In other words, Fubuki as a figurine comes almost complete, with the exception of her 2 arms, which needs to be attached. Let's now remove the parts and base from the plastic wrappings and put Fubuki together. Now that the parts are out of the bag, let's see what we have to work with. The majority of the figure comes already pre-assembled, so Fubuki's head, body and legs come in one piece. However, both her arms need to be attached to the rest of her body. As for her base, it's the standard Banpresto bare bones variety that's just round and black. At least the base has a small footprint, which is welcome considering empty display space is always at a premium for collectors. But before dealing with the base, let me just attach Fubuki's arms to her torso. It seems straightforward enough. All I have to do is just to attach her left arm, which I've already done. Now I'm going on to her right arm. Now, perhaps I spoke too soon. It doesn't seem as straightforward as I made it out to be. Well, that's dumb of me because I didn't pay attention to the box art and assumed her flamenco stance would have one hand up and one hand down, whereas in reality, both her arms have been thrust upwards. Close examination of the connection between Fubuki's arms and her torso reveals rather noticeable seam lines. This is somewhat mitigated by the dark green hues of her tight-fitting dress, which helps lower the visibility of those seam lines. As for the dress itself, it looks like dark green colors had been airbrushed onto a black base coat. With the greens focused on the raised areas of the dress, it gives an illusion of shading on the shadowed areas. Meanwhile, her thigh-high boots are in matte black. We'll just attach Fubuki to the small round base now. There are 4 pegs on that black base, 2 for each of the 2 holes on each of her foot. Now the attachment of Fubuki to her base isn't as straightforward as you think because the holes and pegs are not really aligned perfectly. Some pressure will have to be applied to both her legs, sort of prying it apart to get the holes and pegs to align properly. Luckily, there is sufficient flex and give to each of her legs to allow this realignment of the peg and hole to occur. And once I have Fubuki attached firmly onto her base, we will then move on to a full 360-degree view of Fubuki, aka Blizzard of Hell, from the One Punch Man anime series. Because of the fairly monotone color scheme that Fubuki has, the figurine needed to excel in other departments or end up being considered a below-average figurine. Apart from her skin tone and pearl necklaces, Fubuki is largely clad in black and greens that are so dark they are almost black. Color scheme-wise, this was inevitable if Bandai Spirit's aim was to produce an anime-accurate representation of Fubuki. In the anime, she is depicted in an ensemble that seeks to accentuate her curvy figure. So she has on a dark green form-fitting dress with a V-neck and high collar. She also has a pair of black thigh-high and high-heeled dance boots. But while the color scheme for Fubuki was perfectly understandable, Bandai could have and should have mitigated the dark colors with either a clear transparent base or by painting her dress in a slight lighter shade of dark green. Instead, we have a dull black base and a very dark shade of green for her dress. To allow Fubuki to stand out, Bandai had Fubuki strike up a flamenco dance pose with her skirt hem and pearl necklace twirling outwards. Her arms are stretched upwards, giving her a slim horizontal profile as well as silhouette. She has a height of about 25 centimeters. Both her hair and boots also do not stand out so much because her hair has the same hues as her dress while her boots blend into the black base. As one of the few rare pre-painted figurines of Fubuki, this Banpresto representation of her thankfully bears a very close resemblance to her anime counterpart. She has a focused expression as one would use on flamenco dancers, and her eyes were painted a nice light green too. I wish they had differentiated the shade of her hair and dress, i.e. by retaining the dark green almost black color of her hair, but at least made her dress a lighter shade of dark green. Also, they could have added a layer of lighter dark green so her dress would have had even more shading in terms of having highlights, midtones and shadows instead of just midtones and shadows as seen here. Her iconic pearl necklace is included here, but not the white fur coat, which makes sense as she wouldn't be dancing with her fur coat on. As highlighted earlier, Fubuki's iconic dress is so tight-fitting that you can see almost every curve on her body. This section is where the figurine excels the most, as the sculptor did a fantastic job with Fubuki's body sculpt. Meanwhile, the swirl of her skirt hem is far enough relative to her pose that it looks like she's at the tail end of a flamenco dance move. As I mentioned earlier, her dress is full of midtones and shadows, but unfortunately lacks highlights. If only Bandai had disregarded the cost factor of adding a layer of lighter dark green highlights. Of course, this isn't practical, seeing that the figurine is of the budget-friendly variety. this price was low, having retailed for 2,200 yen back in 2021. Seam lines at her waist and armpit areas, while not ideal, are acceptable, seeing that they aren't too visible against the dark greens of her dress. Fubuki's thigh-high boots look good in matte black, and there is good positioning of her feet relative to the dance pose. My gripe is that having her black boots rest on a black base results in a lack of contrast color-wise. If you want her boots to stand out, then the base has to be a different color. The extreme I wish would be to have it molded in white. Alternatively, perhaps Fubuki can also have a clear transparent base which can work to contrast her black boots. As with all my figurines so far, they are going to be rated based on a 6-tiered ranking system, the explanation of which you can read in the description below. But before I go on and give this Banpresto Fubuki figurine a final rating, let's have a look at the pros and cons of the figurine. Let's look at what is good about her first. Firstly, she has a fantastic pose, unique in anime figures. It also looks dynamic without taking up a large footprint. Not only is it one of the rare figurines you can find of Fubuki, she is definitely well sculpted to the point of bearing a good resemblance to her anime counterpart. And standing at 25 centimeters tall, she will certainly command a presence in your display shelf. As for the cons of this figurine, the color scheme, while technically accurate, lacks contrast. The shading of her iconic dress could have done with an extra layer of lighter dark greens. Also, the seam lines on the armpit area and waistline are noticeable. Lastly, the base should have been molded in a clear plastic or even painted in white to make her boots stand out more. So the rating I'm giving Fubuki is Gold or C rank. It is a figurine that is a good, solid budget piece, but I believe she is only worth getting if you are a One Punch Man fan, which I am. So that then is the unboxing and review of the Banpresto Espresto Shapely figurine of Fubuki. Thanks so much for watching.